So since it's nighttime, I figured I'd come out here and show you the change that I made to the base. The base is looking pretty good, I think. We're doing pretty well with our mountainside base. And what I had to do was I had to move one of the levels up. The two middle levels here were only one block apart. They were too close together. So, big change. It was a big undertaking, but I moved this layer, this level up a bunch of layers, and now it looks more uniform. So now I'll be able to run some piping or power cables or whatever I need to above and below every single level. So I think we're looking pretty good. And with the big change inside as well as outside, what I did was, now I've got my system set up pretty much the same way with the ME, my little control panels here. So I've got all my controls here just like I did before, but you can see I've added an advanced information panel for my nuclear reactor downstairs, which we will get to in a little bit. Now I've moved all of my applied energistic stuff onto this level. So the inscribers that are making circuits and processors, the molecular assemblers are all along here, as well as my processors, my crafting processors and storage units and stuff. So I'm going to line stuff up along that wall. Another one. Wow, why are these guys coming in here? I don't quite get it. Don't quite get why they're coming in here. I put way a lot of torches in here, and I'm still getting endermen in here. I mean, I don't mind. I'm getting some ender pearls, but every once in a while, there's an enderman in here. So downstairs, the nuclear reactor is set up, and I wired it up for an MFE up here, and you can see that this one's pretty much full now. So the wire goes all the way upstairs here, and then above this level, or actually, oh, there he is. Nice. Okay. So below that level is my my machine room. With all the different machines from industrial craft and from thermal expansion. All my RF machines are going to run along here, and what I've done is, over here, down below, the power cable comes up and feeds into this MFSU, which we charged up before with the nuclear power plant while it was running before the meltdown, and you can see that I'm starting to drain out. I had it fully charged, and all this time that I've been running, it's almost drained. It's getting close. Now I've got power converters mod installed, and I can feed from the MFSU all of the machines in this room is basically the plan. So Industrial Craft 2 will obviously be powered by this, but also because of these, you set up a consumer, a bridge, and then a producer, and you can go between mods, between energy systems. So this is going to produce RF for all my machines over here, and you can see they're getting power. So running it across here. Now I've set up a couple of empty slots over here for some things that I'll be recharging with this system for RF, but that's basically where we are. Now I did start setting up all these interfaces in here. I'm going to be wiring up everything so that it's all automated. Haven't quite gotten there yet. I did give myself a crafting terminal over here. Down on this end, I actually put a packager, or a series of packagers, that's being fed cobblestone. Because the quarry is moving so fast out there, it's really grabbing a lot of cobblestone. So let me feed that in here. So what's happening is this is processing cobblestone and compressing it down so it doesn't take up as much space in the ME system. I've gotten rid of all of my barrels that I used to have on this level. They are actually going to come back. They're going to be, oops, wrong way. They're going to be down on the next level, which I haven't dug out yet. And as you can see, this is where the walls used to be on those levels upstairs. So when I come up here, you can see that I've dug out backwards a tremendous amount into the mountainside. I just want to give myself more room and make all the levels even. Because the bottom level sticks out a little farther than the top, I wanted to dig back a little farther so that I had a lot of room. So this level is going to be dug out. I'm going to dig out from this level. I have to be pretty careful, though, because right behind this wall is the reactor. So the reactor may have to be moved. I'm not exactly sure. So that's where we are as far as all the levels are concerned. Big changes, big changes. Taking a long time. That's why I'm doing a lot of it off camera. So now on to the reactor. So as you can see, I've made a pretty big change to the way the reactor's set up. It's the same. I've just added more levels. If you remember from last time, I couldn't get everything working right down on this first level here. But I figured it out, and now I've gone up to a few levels. So let me show you exactly what was going wrong here. I can do it up here actually pretty easily. So right here we've got our lava coming, or our hot liquid, hot coolant from the reactor downstairs coming into the two liquid heat exchangers. In the middle here we've got the steam generator. I had this set to 220. It needed to be 221. That was the big difference. So 221 creates superheated steam. I think we did cover that in the last one actually. Now the superheated steam gets fed to this first steam generator, which turns this turbine, and then also gets fed into this second one. But the only way that it really can get fed is if there's an ejector in here, and I missed that. So the ejector wasn't in here, wasn't getting fed to the second machine on all the, on the setup that I had, I think. And that was another reason why the level that I had originally wasn't working quite right. One of the other things was, and this is a big one, this is the one that I couldn't figure out. This fluid distributor has two different sides to it, a blue and a green. The blue is an input, and you can see those little arrows pointing to the little input right there. And the green is the opposite. It's got green arrows pointing away. That's what this face is. I had those backwards. So in the export here from my pressure fluid conduit that was going to pull the distilled water out, that's why it wasn't pulling that distilled water out. And if you remember last episode, it was filled, and as soon as I switched the modes, it emptied. That's because switching the mode switches every block to the opposite of what it is. So I was switching it from input to output. Now all the things are facing the correct way. So the fluid will come from any distilled water that's left over after the steam it gets to these last blocks and gets generated. It comes into the condenser, which turns it back into the liquid, gets put into this fluid distributor, and then output back into the system to be turned into steam again. So that's why the system wasn't working that way. So there were a lot of mistakes that I had. And those are fixed now, so everything should be working. Let me show you exactly what I've done over here to keep things from melting down again. I've got a tank sensor on the cold coolant tank. And this tank sensor has a little configuration in here that I can set to a certain pattern to make it emit a redstone signal. Now that redstone signal gets pushed to this transmitter, which is set to frequency 10. You can see right there on the block. And then down below, I've got a wireless receiver, also set to frequency 10, and that's pointing toward my redstone port. I moved that redstone port from right there down to the side here, so that it'll be closer and be able to have the receiver push a signal to it. Used to be a little switch on it. So now, when this is set to a certain setting, it'll emit a redstone signal and turn the reactor on. So what I've been doing is, I set it to tank fill, and then I tell it, if this tank is over, that's basically the system starting up. If this is over 5%, then turn the reactor on downstairs. Once this gets all the way down to 5% full or less, this redstone signal will stop and it'll turn the reactor off downstairs. Why does that work? Because remember, the cold liquid is being pulled through the reactor below and over to this tank. So as the system gets behind, it's never going to catch up because it can't process the hot liquid fast enough. I may need actually 2 of these kind of towers to be able to keep up with cooling the liquid. But that's what's happening. The hot liquid's getting put into those machines, you can see, and everything's running fine now. You can see all of these blocks are producing power. The first one is going to produce 100 EU per tick because that's the superheated steam. And you'll see back here, running there. And that's creating superheated steam now. That's that difference between 220 and 221. Superheated gets fed backwards into those 2 machines, which turns the turbines, and these kinetic generators capture that spinning process and turn it into energy, which is feeding everything upstairs. As the system gets behind, you'll see it actually start to build up hot liquid in this tank. And then this starts to empty. Once it gets to that point where it's 5%, the redstone signal will turn off. Down below here you can see our reactor has the coolant going through it, and it's producing 1100 heat units per tick, pretty steadily. So that's it's pretty neat little system. And the only thing that deteriorates in here is the fuel rods, which will have to be replaced periodically. In this system over here, those steam generators have turbines, which you can see actually are deteriorating. So they'll also have to be replaced. We're going to automate all that stuff, I think, in a later episode. But for now, I'm just going to leave them here. And if they get too low, then I'm just going to make some more and distribute them myself manually. I replaced the MFE that was down here with a bat box. This bat box actually takes care of these machines pretty well. The only things that are really powered are the condensers here. So this keeps up with the system pretty well as far as keeping these things powered, even after the reactor and stuff is down. Now, normally this would explode in a horrendous explosion if it's being fed with glass fiber cable. Too much power going in, but I've got my system set up so that in the config file it says no explosions. You can do that as well, or you can actually put a couple of power converters in between here. I think there's a medium, a high, medium, and low. So you'd have to go down from, I think the medium is what takes high input and sets it to low. So you could put one of those in between this box and these fiber cables, and that should take care of you. So as you can see, this is starting to empty now. And we're going to start getting a surplus of hot liquid over here. Remember, this system is does not run it fast enough to be able to keep up with the amount of hot liquid being produced below. So once this over here gets down to 5%, the system will turn on and off. So let's hold off and wait until it gets down. I think it's about 8,000 or 9,000 is 5% of the tank capacity. So we'll wait here until it actually gets down there. Okay, so now you can see it's right around the point where we need to be, and the signal's turned off. Must be a thunderstorm outside. So you can see it cycling on and off as this thing gets filled up. Now, why is that happening? Well, downstairs here, you can see it cycling on and off too. Even though the system has reached 5% full up there and it shuts everything off, we're still cooling, we're still processing this hot liquid. So this is still getting processed, and if I come over here and actually shut this off, you'll see the system keeps running, even though I've turned off the reactor downstairs. Because we've got this hot coolant surplus, it's actually cycling through that. Remember that the power is actually produced on this level up here. downstairs the hot liquid is actually made. So as we cycle through this, the system keeps running. That's why we want a bat box on here, because we want these systems still to be able to process. Now this keeps up pretty well because we're actually feeding power into it. So let me turn that down. So we continue to go through here, and you can see that we're building up now again. As we're processing, we're building up because no more hot liquids being produced. The reactor's off downstairs. Hope that makes things clear as far as how the system works. So I can go in here, turn this back on. Whoops. Tank filled. 5%. And it's over 5%, so now we're on constantly again. So now the reactor's on downstairs. Hot liquid's being produced again. And you can see this is going to start climbing. So the ideal situation was have maybe another one of these towers and distribute evenly the liquid between the two towers, so that we're never actually having a buildup of hot coolant. The coolant is moving through as fast as it's being produced. That's the goal. And then you'll have constant power. But it doesn't matter, because this system works pretty well, actually. When it starts to cycle on and off, we start to lose the heat units a little bit, because this won't stay at a constant pace. So we'll actually have less heat units being produced per tick. So I think my goal probably is to, and I've had to make a little tunnel over here to get back upstairs because I dug back all my walls and stuff. So, but I think my goal is to have keep this pretty full. This is the MFE. That's pretty full. But let's go down and look at the MFSU. That's what I wanted to look at. So you can see that it's starting to fill up. The power's coming up from downstairs, filling it up pretty nicely. Once I get it up there to being completely full, I'll just turn everything off. I'll turn the reactor off and just let it sit and run, and everything will run off of that. But first we want to charge it up. So I'm going to leave this running for now, let it charge up, and what's going to happen is it'll take a little bit, but we will fill it up. It takes a while to get through this. The system works pretty well. I can probably imagine that one more of these towers would actually take care of everything. Then we would never have to worry about the actual the reactor actually running out of power. The main thing would be, or running out of coolant, I mean. The main thing would be that we would be producing power and then would have nowhere to go because the MFSU upstairs would be filled. So, but I'm going to let this run and charge up, and you can see everything works pretty nicely, and no explosions and no meltdown, so that's great.